I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sean Brodrick, natural resource specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, investmentu.com. Welcome back to the show, Sean.
Thanks for having me on, Jim.
Well, is the Fed a little schizoid or paranoid or something-oid? One statement from Janet Yellen and then something from somebody else.
Oh, my God. It was so amazing, Jim. And it didn't even end there. Yeah. Let's just recap for anyone who was asleep when it happened. Janet Yellen came out and said, oh, you know, she said the case for interest rate hike was stronger, but still it depended on, like, new data. And so the market said, okay, that means no hike in September. So everything blasted off. Obviously, the Fed didn't like that reaction. 3 hours later, Fed Vice Chairman Stanley Fischer comes out, has an interview with CNBC, said that her speech was consistent with 2 rate hike increases this year, and he broadly hinted at September. And so that tanked the market. It tanked gold, though gold did close up slightly positive for the day. And then, that was going into the weekend, right? And so now, no one knows what's going on, but everyone's really worried that now we are going to have an interest rate hike in September, and the market has now priced in a 42% chance of that happening, up from near zero beforehand. So, but then on Saturday, something even more amazing happened, because 2 other Fed governors came out. One was Bullard, I forget who the other one was, and they said, you know what? We don't agree with Stanley Fischer's position. We wouldn't take that position. And the other guy said, oh, I'm agnostic about rate hikes. So on Saturday, these 2 guys seem to be contradicting Fischer, who contradicted his boss 3 hours after she spoke. If the market, if the Fed is trying to confuse the market, it's doing a darned good job of it, because by now nobody knows what's going on in September. However, there's a few things that I'll get to that are bullish, but just to finish up on the Fed, if the Fed does hike, and I'd expect more a hike in like December than September, but who knows? But if they do, I believe it's a one and done for the Fed, because they're just looking for a fig leaf at this point, because they've been talking up this rate hike for months and months now, right? And so if they do it, then it's a one and done. That could actually take a weight off gold, because it actually won't be that bad. And so that could be the signal for gold's next leg up. But let's talk about some other stuff that's coming out. One is that the Fed's favorite inflation indicator, the PCE, the personal consumption expenditures, came out for July, and it was 1.6%, which is exactly what it's been March through June. In other words, no increase for inflation. None. And without an increase in inflation, why is the Fed raising rates? That's what everyone has to ask themselves. And the final thing that I'll point out is that Deutsche Bank just came out with a note on gold, and they said that the balance sheets of the world's big central banks, they were talking the big 4, which is the U.S., the ECP, Japan, and China, those have gone up like 300% since 2005. But the amount of gold above ground has only gone up 19%. They said for like the value of that money, and gold is real money, to actually get, some kind of equality with the amount of new government debt that's been created, gold would have to go to $1,700 an ounce, and it might not take that long to do it. So you put all those things together, and I think that one reason that we started out this week with it looks like gold and the miners actually finding their feet is because people are realizing that maybe Fischer is just trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes, and the Fed is not going to raise rates in September. And I'll close with one thing. A year ago, in August, Fisher came out and broadly hinted that there was going to be a rate hike in September, and when September came around, did the Fed hike rates? They did not. So he has a history of misleading the market because he's trying to accomplish something through his words so the Fed doesn't have to do something with an actual rate hike. What he's trying to accomplish is he wants to support yields because he doesn't want U.S. government yields to slip down that slippery slope that we've seen in Europe, that we've seen in Japan, where things get closer and closer to zero, and then in like those places, they've actually gone below zero. That's what he's trying to avoid. So I think he has really good intentions, but he has confused the heck out of the market, and so we'll actually see what happens in September. It could be a very interesting time.
Does a higher U.S. dollar or a higher interest rate lead to a higher U.S. dollar?
Well, it's certainly doing that now. We're seeing the U.S. dollar do very well against the Chinese yuan. It's at like a 1 month high, and that thing's supposed to be controlled in a range, but it's at the top end of the range now, up against the yen. So yeah, I mean, and again, this is the thing that that U.S. corporations are screaming about because we've had U.S. earnings go down for 5 quarters in a row. There are a lot of reasons for that, but one reason that they keep hammering about is that our exports are becoming too expensive for the rest of the world to buy, and that's due to the strong dollar. So you have to look at that and think, does the Fed really want to, hurt U.S. corporations anymore by raising rates in this environment? What it would actually love is for Europe and Japan to start raising their rates to give it a little room, but we haven't seen that yet.
Apart from cars to Canada, what else does the U.S. export anyway?
Oh, gosh, we export so much grain, it's not funny. We are exporting oil now. In fact, we could have a great talk about that, about how much U.S. oil exports are really rising. They export all sorts of things, airplanes, technology, you name it. We are a big exporter. The problem is we're much more of an importer than we are an exporter because we buy all the cheap stuff from Asia.
Well, now I know. Of course, now both U.S. presidential candidates have talked about more protectionism. Is that a good move?
Talked about it, doing it are two different things. I don't believe that talk about more protectionism will go anything beyond the campaign trail. I don't think they're actually serious about that. Because at the end of the day, what matters are the heavy-hitting corporations that rule Washington, D.C. So I believe they will get their way, and we won't see more protectionism. Now, we can, theorize what that might be, but I don't think you'll see anything. I mean, you might see some 1 or 2 things change, just small things, just to tell people that they're actually getting some stuff done, but no, they won't really do anything.
Do politicians realize how integrated the Canadian and U.S. economies are, with factories on both sides of the border completely dependent on each other?
Oh, I think they have to know that. That's one reason why they really couldn't do it. And this whole TPP thing, they've made a lot of noise about not following through with that. Excuse me. Personally, I would be happy if we did not follow through with it, considering how much NAFTA hurt the U.S. worker. But I believe that they'll probably, put through at least big parts of it because it's so much in the interest of the large corporations that really dominate Washington and Wall Street with big bags of money.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after the break.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the 4th largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sean Brodrick. Sean, you're saying that lithium, which has been a big player lately, might even have a surplus right now, despite that giga factory in Nevada.
Yeah, there are some new factories around the world coming online, and so the latest estimation, and of course this can change, right? Because we're just making guesstimates on all this stuff. But the latest estimation is we will see a surplus starting in 2017, and it should run into, say, late 2017, early 2018. But the longer-term trend, I mean, you just can't open minds fast enough. When you look at things like electric vehicles, they're building a lot more of them over in China. We are seeing more and more demand from all over the world. In fact, we talk about electric vehicles here in the U.S. and in North America, from like a Tesla, that kind of thing. There is such a surge, tidal wave of like electric vehicles over in China. They have like 31 makers of electric or hybrid vehicles. They are buying more and more of them. They have electric buses. They have electric, all this stuff. So there's incredible demand for it over there, and it'll spread from China. It'll go through the rest of Asia probably, because many of those countries have pollution problems, and electric vehicles is one way around it. And of course, we can have the long conversation about how is that electricity generated, is it really clean? But it's people's perception on the ground. And so right now there are tax breaks over there for electric vehicles, and definitely being used a lot. And so, and also we are seeing costs coming down, despite the fact that the price of lithium is going higher. And this is counterintuitive. The price of the batteries in electric vehicles is actually going down.
Mass production.
Now, right, exactly. We have mass production, automation, and also lithium. We have mass production, automation, and also lithium is just one component of the batteries. So you put all that together, and the price of the batteries is coming down, which makes the cars cheaper, and so it's all kind of a virtuous circle for the electric vehicle market. So we'll probably see more of those as well.
And Tesla has reduced the range anxiety by increasing the capacity of their batteries to 600 kilometers, which is a nice distance.
Yes, it is. And that's there's other stuff going on in batteries as well. These are all the first steps in the next generation of batteries, which will probably be amazing. I mean, because for so long, battery technology has actually lagged the advances in, like, automobiles. So now we're getting to the point where they can do some really tremendous stuff. Now, one thing that could put a kink in, like, rapid expansion of, like, lithium mining is if they find out a way to make the batteries much more efficient and use less lithium. I know they're working on that right now. That doesn't mean that they'll get there in the next 5 years, though. But that is something that you have to be aware of. Just because a trend is going on doesn't mean that it has to continue forever.
Say in Britain, what they've done, you don't have to worry about your battery. Their new freeways are being built with an automatic charging lane, a green lane that will charge your car automatically. So you don't have to worry about that. I heard that,
and I haven't actually looked into it. That sounds like more science fiction than anything, but if they can do it, that is going to be amazing. That is going to be great. Now, of course, here in the U.S., we seem to have stopped building roads and stuff. So, but maybe that'll change under a future Congress. We'll have to see how that works out. But so I don't actually focus on the long-term forecasts in, like, lithium, but the next 5 years is really going to be great. And so that's an area where I think you can see some tremendous growth and some great profit opportunities.
Is solar taking off?
Oh, my gosh. So many things going on in solar now. It's amazing. Now they're actually talking about doing electric planes, part of which will be they'll have super efficient solar cells just all over the wings and roofs and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, more and more stuff. They are making the cells more and more efficient, like every single week. Seems some new piece of research comes out that's, you know, more efficient, organic solar cells, this, that, and the other. We're really seeing a tremendous solar revolution. And of course, there is a thing that if you have an electric car and you have solar power at your home, you can use the car as a charging station. So that all feeds into itself as well.
Well, I've been wondering, we have electric vehicles. I don't see solar panels on the vehicles. Why not?
Well, you see it on the experimental ones. That's a great question. Why don't they do more of that? Maybe they're just waiting for the cells to improve, maybe what they can get out of it, because the ones that do have those cells on the car, they're ultra lightweight cars, you know? And so that might be part of it, is that you just can't get enough room out of those cells because the car is way too much, especially with all the safety stuff that we have to put in cars. But hey, I drive on I-95 in South Florida. Let me tell you, thank God we have safety stuff, because I just passed like 3 major accidents on the way to work today. So I'm not in favor of reducing safety stuff from cars. But as they get lighter, which they will, because they also have new materials that they're making cars out of, and as the cells get better, maybe that'll be one thing that they take. That's the bright new future that we're all hoping comes sooner rather than later, and something I find very exciting.
Is solar dependent on silver, or are there other ways around not using silver, or is silver cheap enough anyway?
Well, silver's pretty cheap now. They keep trying to find alternatives. You're absolutely right. One thing they have found is to make them more efficient. They use, I think it's 6% less silver per year in a solar cell. I'd have to go look that number up. I can't remember. So over time, they're able to reduce how much silver they use. So I don't think it's as much of a problem as it would have been, say, 10 years ago, when they were probably using twice as much silver as they are now. But, you know, it's still a force in the market. It's a big source of demand, and that's not really going to go away. So that'll provide a boost to the price of silver, but so will many industrial things. There's so many industrial uses for silver. You know, I mean, we can look at what happens with solar, but there's so much going on in silver. That's one of the reasons I'm so bullish on that metal.
What about oil? You said the Saudis have said, okay, we've taken the lid off it, forget about production cutbacks.
Yeah, I think they're just playing the market. I think, I really do. I think that because we know that the amount of money that the government has stockpiled is slowly going down because of the low oil prices, right? So I wonder if individual Saudis, you know, the princes of the family are playing the market, right? Because they come out like one week and they say, oh, you know, we can definitely work out some kind of agreement and limit production and all that stuff. And like for the next 3 weeks, prices go higher. And then, you know, other members of the family come out and say, oh, you know, this just isn't working out. The Iranians, they're really being, you know, really hard-headed about this and all that stuff, which we all knew anyway. In fact, I wrote articles about this saying, you know, right now, Saudi Arabia trying to get an agreement out of OPEC is like trying to herd cats, because there are so many countries in OPEC that have said that they are going to increase production no matter what Saudi Arabia says or does. That includes Iraq, that includes Iran, that includes Nigeria, which just got a peace deal with the rebels, and Libya, you know, depending on if they're shooting at each other or not, maybe they'll increase production. So it's very hard for the Saudis to get a handle on it, and it's hard for the Saudis to point the finger at anybody because they have increased production so much in the past year. They've added 1 million barrels a day. So, you know, I think that will be a hard thing to do. The real lower production we'll see, hate to say this, is probably in North America. But combine that with the fact that we have more oil exports, and which are increasing all the time, by the way, because we lifted our laws in the U.S. and you folks up in Canada sell to us and all that stuff. So it's generally increasing North American exports quite a bit. I think we could see some real support for the price of oil in North America come into play. I've been calling for some kind of like new leg up in oil, maybe in the first part of 2017, but it also could be as early as late 2016. We'll have to see. Right now, oil is in a range. It's in a range, and this is for West Texas. This is for West Texas Intermediate. Of course, all oil has its own price structure. But here in the U.S., it's between 50 and 35, and it just ranges in between there. And it's been toward the higher end of the range now, but something might happen where it could go down to the lower end of the range. But a lot of those shale fields, because there's less new drilling going on, then we'll start to see lower and lower production from those wells. And so toward the end of this year, maybe in the second quarter of 2017, we could really start to see production pinch. Now combine that with the fact that around the world, global demand is rising. It's not like the world stopped. And so, especially with low oil prices, people are using more and more oil. So at some point, we are going to see demand catch up with that oversupply, so things really take off. So I'm not actually bearish on oil prices and oil stocks now. The damage has been done. I think that you can find nice ones on a pullback, especially ones that are more secure about paying a nice dividend, and hold on, because eventually that will turn around and they will head higher.
How long before solar power and electric cars really take a chunk out of oil?
I don't know about oil. They have really crippled coal here in North America. In fact, I was just reading that up in Oregon, they have found that they were able to phase out coal usage at plants ahead of time, simply because solar just became that much cheaper. So much solar has been built, they were able to get great deals, and so they were able to phase out coal completely, and all it added was 1 cent per kilowatt hour to everyone's bill. And so that seems to be done there. But the thing about electric cars is you have to remember that electric cars don't generate their own electricity. That electricity has to come from somewhere. And maybe it could come from a solar plant, maybe it'll come from a nuclear plant, maybe it'll come from something else, but it has to come from somewhere. And so stuff about talking about cars with solar cells on them, being able to generate enough juice to drive down the road, I really think that's really far down the road, if ever. And so that's quite some ways away. But there's enough near-term stuff that's really exciting and has so many potential profit opportunities that I think there's plenty to play with, frankly.
Sean, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure, and I always have a great time on your show.
My guest has been Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. Check out his website, energyandresourcesdigest.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. You can find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.